right, so we are back in our proofs packet now on page 4. Notice I did kind of stop here intentionally. This year we are going just a little bit light because we know that this is super tough to work through all these proofs while you're at home just watching videos, not being able to ask questions as easily as if you were in class. So I will post the answer key to all these. There's nothing wrong with these proofs. And in fact, if you're doing some of these, then you're probably going to do really, really well on the test. But if you're also struggling because these are a little bit more complicated, then that's okay to just skip them as well. The ones that we did at the beginning on this page are definitely proofs that you should be able to do, as far as the ones that we are going to do in class as well. But I will say in past years, we typically go through and do all of these proofs. So it is a kind of a good idea that you're getting used to doing them and being able to do them. Once again, don't waste time doing all of them, but doing a couple on each page is probably going to help you be successful. So I'm going to jump all the way to our CP/CTC proofs, which means I'm jumping pretty far. So we have page 10 here, and actually we're going to start on page 11. Okay, and then I'm going to flip to the back so we have some front ones. So let's just do this one together as kind of a warm-up, and then we can get into our CP/CTC proofs as well. So just a reminder, we're going to put all of our statements on the left side and our reasons on the right. Okay. When I start a proof, we always want to start with our givens. So I'm going to say angle P is congruent to angle S. And our reason for that is going to be given. Now it is okay if you want to put all of your reasons or all of your givens on the same step. So if I want to say angle P is congruent to angle S and R is midpoint of PS. That's okay to combine that into one step. It's up to you. Sometimes if you're given steps, it'll do that. So just keep that in mind. All right, so now we want to absolutely mark anything that we know. So we know angle P is congruent to angle S, and we know R is the midpoint of segment PS. So we were given one angle here, and let's see now if we can find the next thing that we can do. So remember, we always want to use our givens. So that first part of the givens is already used, but we haven't done anything with R as the midpoint of PS. And if R is the midpoint of PS, that means it cuts this into two equal sections or two congruent segments. So I can say that PR segment is congruent to segment RS. And that's going to be a side that is congruent. And our reason for this one is, once again, if you use a vocabulary word, really good chance we're going to use that. So definition of midpoint. All right, and step 3 of our proof, we now have an angle, we now have a side. I've used all my givens. We did that in step 1. Step 2, I used the given information from statement 1 to help me prove that a pair of sides were congruent. So now that we've used all of that given information, then we got to start looking for those invisible things like reflexive or vertical angles. So for this next one, we're going to say angle QRP is congruent to angle TRS. So QRP into TRS, and this is going to be vertical angles. And actually I'll shorten that up. So by now we can say vertical angle theorem, or VAT is just fine with me. All right, and that gives us another angle that is congruent. So now step 4, we can say that triangle PQR is congruent to triangle STR, And our reason for that is actually it's perfectly in order. So we've got angle, angle, side, angle. Remember that that side that is corresponding and congruent is in between the two angles. And so our statements for this would be our first angle was step 1, step 2, and step 3. So there's our proof. We got to exactly where we needed to be. We made it to what we wanted to prove as our end goal. But let's instead and say that it didn't say to prove this, but instead it says to prove angle Q is congruent to angle T. And so this is where we're going to use that new step that we have, and we're going to say angle Q is congruent to angle T, and my reasoning for that is going to be CPCTC. Because we know that these triangles are congruent, we now know that all the corresponding parts are also congruent. So I know that this last angle has to be congruent to each other because of that. And so anytime we do a CPCTC, we have to have a step in our proof that says triangles are congruent. So therefore, that's step 4 for us in this proof. So today we're going to basically be doing that, just that one extra step in our proof, just adding that one line onto our proof in order to do it. So let's move on to some of these proofs. All right, so I just turned the page, so from this page to now proofs page 12 on the bottom. And let's take a look at a couple of these. So my first step here is going to say that GH segment is congruent to segment KL, and this is given to us. And then my next reason says that I have a given, so it's got to be the next given that we've got, angle G, that's a Q, angle G, there we go, that's better, is congruent to angle K. And then the last thing it says for me is that segment GI is congruent to KJ. So this is also going to be given. And then let's make sure that we put all of this information into our proof. So we have GH congruent to segment KL. We have GI that's congruent to KJ. And then we also have to say that angle angle G is congruent to angle K. So this is going to be a side, an angle, and then a side. So we are given more than enough information to know that these triangles are congruent. So therefore, our next part of this proof is just going to be to say, yeah, these triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. So, and we can do any of the triangle congruency statements that fit. I will just do HGI. It's congruent to triangle LKJ. And my side angle side is going to be step 1, step 2, and step 3. Anytime you see something like side angle side or side 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 or RHL, you know that your statement should be saying that triangles are congruent. All right, and the last statement we have here is that HI is congruent to JL. And this, once again, is just going to be that extra step that we add on to proofs now, saying corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, and I know I have congruent triangles in step 4. All right, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can complete the proof number 5. So this one right here, see how you do on that one. All right, so here is this last proof. So remember, step 1 is going to be our given information right here. So angle MNP is congruent to angle OPN. And I marked them right here and right here. My next segment was also given, or my next statement, that those segments are congruent. That's given as well. So saying that MN is congruent to segment OP. And then the next step, once we've used all our givens, remember we want to look for those invisible things like reflexive or vertical angles. So we're going to say NP is congruent to NP. That's reflexive. And so, first of all, I know we see ASS here, and we know that ASS doesn't help us prove triangles are congruent, but remember the steps can be out of order, and that's okay. So if we look at our triangle, we have a side, and then we have an angle, and then we have a side. So the angle is in between the two sides, or touching the two sides. So therefore, this is going to be side, angle, side, and it's not in the format of angle, side, side. So we're good here with side, angle, side, step 2, then step 1, then step 3. And once we have our triangles congruent, we can then do what we're trying to do, which is prove that these segments are congruent. So segment MP is congruent to segment NO, and that's going to be our corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent in step 4. All right, so today is our last day of proofs. We're going to move on to 4.8 tomorrow. So do as much practice as you need to feel comfortable with this material. Just so you know, anything that's around a 5-step proof is something that you should be able to do. Even a 6-step proof should be doable and would be something that we'd show you on the test. I would say anything beyond that, for the most part, is something that we probably wouldn't expect you to do this year, but in past years we've expected. So it might be stuff that you see on ACTs, MCAs, stuff like that, but it won't be anything that we test you on a geometry test or final. So go ahead and take a look at this. I'll post answer keys for these problems here. When we start getting to proofs page 13, this one looks a little bit different, and once again, it is getting a little bit more complicated because you can see a 7-step proof and whatnot. I'll post answer keys to some of this stuff as well, especially stuff when we get here and we don't give you the amount of statements and reasons and don't give you any help. But note that this stuff that is this complicated won't exactly be on the test itself, but once again, doing a little bit of practice is going to be good when you do these.